The kitchen light flickered over a half-melted birthday cake. 9 candles leaned unlit. A boy stared at the door, waiting for a father who hadn't come home. Down the street, a landlord's notice slapped against a window. But soon, the porch would tremble, not with sorrow, but with 81 roaring engines. Before we start today's story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. Daniel Brooks sat at the edge of his bed, a pay stub crumpled in his fist. 39 years old, single father, lines etched deeper than his age. The numbers didn't lie. Rent overdue, utilities behind, groceries are thinner each week. His boy Ethan turned 9 tonight. He had begged for a cake, just a small one, and Daniel had promised. But promises don't pay landlords. He rubbed his forehead, shame pressing harder than hunger. Ethan deserved balloons, laughter, gifts stacked high. Instead, he'd get silence. Daniel shoved the stub into his pocket, pulled on his work jacket, and whispered to himself, "One more day, just one more." He shut the door softly, not to wake his son. In the kitchen, the cake waited, a cheap supermarket one, candles unopened. A father's love couldn't stretch dollars into miracles. And as Daniel walked into the night, he carried a weight heavier than rent. Failure. Ethan sat at the table, staring at the frosting. He had set out 2 paper plates himself, forks side by side. His mom had left years ago, chasing freedom that didn't include him. All he had was his dad. And tonight, his dad was gone. He blew on the candles still wrapped in plastic, pretending. Smoke curled. Across the street, neighbors laughed around a grill. Music spilled from windows. Ethan folded his arms, cheeks burning. He loved his dad, but love didn't taste like chocolate. Upstairs, the old apartment creaked with drafts. The fridge hummed emptily. He whispered to the shadows, "He'll come back. He has to." But when footsteps rose in the hall, it wasn't Daniel's. It was the landlord sliding another notice under the door. Red letters screamed, "Final warning." Ethan crumpled it in his fist, and outside, somewhere in the night, engines began to stir. Daniel stood in line at the landlord's office, rent folded in trembling hands, every dollar scraped from overtime, shifts, every promise to Ethan sacrificed for one signature. Behind the desk, Mr. Hanley smiled thin, tapping polished nails on mahogany. "You're late again, Brooks." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I know, but it's here, every cent." Hanley counted slowly, as though savoring Daniel's shame. "You work yourself raw for crumbs. Maybe find a new place, somewhere you can actually afford." Daniel clenched his jaw. He wanted to tell him about Ethan, about birthdays and promises, but pride was brittle and silence safer. Hanley slid the receipt across the desk. 1 month, don't be late again." Daniel nodded, stuffing the paper into his pocket. Outside, the street buzzed with life. Families laughed, lights twinkled in diners. He walked back to an apartment where a boy sat alone with cake gone cold. Each step cut deep. When Daniel pushed the door open, the first thing he saw was the untouched cake. The second was Ethan asleep on the couch, candles clutched in his small hand. Daniel's chest cracked. He set the receipt down, knelt beside his boy and whispered, "I'm sorry, champ." Ethan stirred, eyes hazy. "Did we miss it?" Daniel forced a smile. "No, we can still light 'em." But Ethan shook his head. "I wished already, didn't work." He rolled over, back turned. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the cake. A father's failures, iced in sugar. He wanted to rage, to scream at the world. But all he could do was bury his face in his hands. Outside, thunder grew, not from skies but from the ground. A sound Daniel hadn't heard in years. Engines, dozens of them, rolling closer, shaking glass. Ethan sat up, wide-eyed. The porch began to tremble. The roar outside was unmistakable. Harleys, lined like soldiers. Daniel pulled back the curtain, heart stopping. Across the street, chrome gleamed under street lamps. Leather jackets bore patches scarred with history. Hell's Angels. Ethan pressed against the glass. "Dad, they're here." Daniel's blood ran cold. He hadn't heard from that world in over a decade. Once he'd been a prospect, running errands, chasing respect. But when Ethan was born, Daniel walked away, choosing fatherhood over brotherhood. He thought he'd closed that chapter forever. Until now. The engines idled, a storm contained. From the pack, one rider dismounted, boots heavy on pavement. His beard was grey, his eyes sharp. The patch on his chest read, "Grim." He stepped onto the porch, knocked once. Daniel froze. Ethan whispered, "Who is he?" Daniel swallowed, hard. Family, the kind you don't ignore. He opened the door. Grim stood there, rain slicking his jacket. He scanned Daniel, then the boy peeking from behind him. "He's yours?" Grim asked. Daniel nodded. "Ethan, 9 today." Grim's gaze softened a fraction. "Heard about your trouble. Word travels." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm fine. Paid the rent." Grim stepped closer. "You think survival's enough for him? Kid deserves more than cold cake and notices." Ethan clutched his dad's arm, uncertain. Grim crouched, eye level with him. "You know who we are, son?" Ethan shook his head. Grim smiled faintly. "We're your dad's old family, and we don't let family go hungry." Engines roared once outside, as if on cue. Daniel stammered, "I don't want trouble." Grim stood tall. "We didn't come for trouble. We came to remind you, you ain't alone, not now, not ever." Ethan's eyes widened, hope sparking. Daniel's heart wavered between shame and relief. The Angels rolled open saddlebags, pulling out boxes wrapped in grocery bags. Meat, bread, milk, even toys, spread across the porch like gifts from thunder. Ethan gasped, rushing forward to touch a basketball still gleaming with store tags. Daniel's eyes burned. "Why? After all these years?" Grim crossed his arms. "Because once you ride with us, you're family. Doesn't matter if you quit the road, blood or not, your kid's ours too." Neighbors peeked through blinds, murmuring. Some whispered fear, others envy. To them the Angels were outlaws. To Ethan they were miracle makers. Grim leaned close to Daniel. "You've carried weight too long alone. Let us shoulder some." Daniel tried to protest, but Ethan tugged his sleeve, whispering, "Please, Dad." For the first time that night, Daniel smiled, a real one, and as the Angels carried boxes inside, the apartment filled with laughter instead of silence. Dinner became a feast. Ethan's plate piled with more food than he'd seen in months. The Angels crowded the small kitchen, leather and steel out of place against peeling wallpaper. They laughed, teased, shared stories that made Ethan's eyes sparkle. For dessert, Grim placed 9 candles into the cake and nodded at Daniel. "Light 'em this time." Daniel struck a match, flame trembling. He leaned close, whispering, "Make a wish, buddy." Ethan closed his eyes, cheeks puffing. When the candles dimmed, to smoke, applause shook the room. Ethan grinned wide, frosting smeared on his lips. Daniel watched, chest swelling. Shame still lingered, but it was washed in gratitude. Grim clapped him on the shoulder. "See, kid didn't need riches, just needed you, and a reminder that he's never alone." Daniel blinked away tears. For the first time in years, he felt like a father who hadn't failed. Later, after laughter faded and dishes piled, Daniel stepped onto the porch with Grim. The engines still idled, a heartbeat of protection. Daniel sighed. "You know I left that life behind for him." Grim nodded. "We ain't asking you back. Just reminding you, Brotherhood doesn't quit on you, even if you quit on it." Daniel rubbed his face, torn. What if people talk? What if they judge? Grim snorted. Let them. They don't feed your kid. They don't pay your rent. Silence stretched, broken only by distant thunder. Grim's eyes softened. We all got scars, Danny. But scars don't mean weakness. They mean survival. And survival's something to be proud of. Daniel swallowed hard, the weight on his shoulders lighter for once. He didn't feel rescued. He felt remembered. Inside, Ethan lay under blankets, clutching the basketball to his chest. He whispered into the dark, "Best birthday ever." Daniel stood in the doorway, listening. His heart ached, but not from failure, from love so fierce it hurt. He turned back to Grim. "What if I can't keep this up? What if next month it's the same?" Grim smiled. "Then we'll remind you again. But listen, don't mistake. Pride for strength. Real strength is letting others help." Daniel leaned on the doorframe, shoulders trembling. Years of carrying weight alone cracked, letting something new in. "Thank you," he whispered. Grim simply nodded. "It's what family does." Outside, the angels mounted their bikes. Engines roared back to life, shaking the night. Ethan stirred, eyes half open, whispering, "They sound like thunder." Daniel smiled softly. "That's what they are, son. Thunder that watches over us." Weeks passed, and life didn't magically fix itself. Bills still arrived. Overtime still drained Daniel's body. But now groceries never ran out. Sometimes a package showed up on the porch, clothes in Ethan's size, notebooks for school, a new pair of boots for Daniel. No return address, just the mark of family. Neighbors whispered louder now. Some called it charity, others muttered warnings, but Daniel didn't care. Ethan was smiling again, running outside with new shoes, shooting hoops in the driveway until dusk. The boy who once whispered wishes to shadows now laughed at the sky. Daniel watched from the steps, tears hidden behind tired eyes. He wasn't alone anymore. The engines didn't come every night, but when they did, Ethan ran to the porch waving like they were superheroes, and in a way, to him, they were. One Saturday, Daniel took Ethan to the park. They shot hoops together, Ethan's laughter ringing like bells. Parents watched from benches, some nodding politely, others eyeing Daniel with suspicion. One father leaned over, sneering, "You really let them around your boy? That's who you want him looking up to?" Daniel froze, words caught in his throat. Ethan stopped dribbling, looking between them. The man smirked. "Figures. Trash breeds trash." Heat surged in Daniel's chest. Before he could reply, Ethan squared his shoulders, voice steady. "They gave me a birthday when nobody else did. That's more than you ever gave me." Silence stunned the park. The man muttered and turned away. Daniel knelt, pulling Ethan close. "Proud of you, champ." Tears stung his eyes. His son had found his own voice and his own strength. That night, back at the apartment, Daniel lit the candles again. No birthday, just light in the dark. Ethan grinned. "We don't need a reason, right?" Daniel chuckled, watching the flames flicker against peeling wallpaper. "Right. Sometimes we just celebrate we made it another day." Ethan blew them out, laughter chasing shadows. Daniel stared at the smoke rising, a silent prayer in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the walls were closing in. He felt like the world had widened. Ethan tugged his sleeve. "Dad, do you think they'll come back?" Daniel smiled. "They always do. That's what family does." Outside, the night was quiet, but somewhere beyond the horizon, engines waited, ready to ride at the first call of need. And Daniel knew they always would. One evening, Daniel found a note slipped under his door. It wasn't from the landlord. It was scrawled in bold ink. "Your strength isn't in what you carry alone. It's in what you share. Proud of you, brother." No signature, but Daniel knew. He pressed the note to his chest, whispering, "Thank you." Ethan found him standing there, eyes wet. "Dad, you okay?" Daniel smiled. "Better than okay." He folded the note, tucking it into his wallet beside Ethan's school photo. It became his reminder that even in the hardest moments he wasn't fighting alone, that somewhere thunder rolled in loyalty, and that his boy would grow up not just knowing struggle, but knowing the power of brotherhood, of being held when life tried to break you. Months turned to a year. Ethan grew taller, voice louder, courage stronger. Birthdays came with laughter now, not silence. The angels didn't show up every time, but they didn't need to. Their presence was stitched into every corner of Daniel's life, invisible yet unbreakable. One autumn evening, Daniel and Ethan walked home from school, leaves crunching underfoot. Ethan pointed at a mural sprayed on a brick wall, a wheel with wings. "That's them, isn't it?" Daniel nodded, heart tight. "Yeah, that's them." Ethan smiled. "I think they're like superheroes, not the kind in capes. The kind that make sure nobody gets left behind." Daniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, voice thick. "You're right, buddy. And one day, you'll do the same for someone else." Ethan nodded, eyes glowing. The boy who once whispered wishes now dreamed of being thunder himself. Daniel never forgot the night the porch shook. He carried it like scripture, like armor. At work, when exhaustion bent his back, he remembered Ethan's laughter as candles, smoked. When bills piled high, he remembered boxes spilling food across the porch. When shame whispered he wasn't enough, he remembered Grimm's words, "Scars mean survival." And each time he rose, Ethan noticed. "Dad, you smile more now," he said one evening, setting plates on the table. Daniel ruffled his hair. "That's because you give me reasons." They sat together, eating simple food that tasted rich, because it wasn't laced with fear. Daniel watched his boy grow and realized maybe he hadn't failed. Maybe surviving, showing up, and loving fiercely was enough. More than enough. Years later, Ethan stood taller than his father. He worked weekends saving for college. One night, he brought home a friend who had no place to go. Daniel saw the same hunger in the boy's eyes, the same loneliness Ethan once carried. Without hesitation, Ethan set a plate, poured a glass of milk and said, "You can stay here. We've got room." Daniel's throat closed. He stepped into the kitchen, gripping the counter. This was the legacy, the chain unbroken, not riches, not glory, just kindness passed down. When Ethan joined him, Daniel pulled him into a hug. "You're thunder now, son," Ethan smiled, "because you showed me how." Outside, faintly in the distance, engines rumbled as if in agreement. The angels didn't fade from their lives. Sometimes they appeared at games, their presence enough to hush bullies and silence whispers. Other times Daniel found packages on the porch, signed with nothing but a wing and wheel. Ethan grew into manhood, surrounded not by shame, but by a circle of men who taught him that loyalty was louder than wealth. And Daniel, he carried his scars differently now, no longer as failures, but as proof that he had endured. On quiet nights, he sat on the porch with Ethan, listening for engines. Sometimes they came. Sometimes they didn't, but the promise was always there. Protection, brotherhood, and love forged in the roar of 81 engines. On Ethan's 18th birthday, the porch shook again. Not with debt, not with sorrow, but with celebration. Engines lined the street, headlights blazing like stars. Grimm stepped forward, grinning. 9 years ago we lit candles for you. Tonight you light your own." Ethan smiled, striking a match. He lit the cake himself, fire reflecting in his grown eyes. Daniel watched, tears unashamed. The boy who once blew on unlit candles had become a man, surrounded by family born of thunder. Laughter and engines filled the street, neighbors no longer whispering, only watching, awed. Ethan made his wish, blowing flames into smoke. This time it wasn't survival he wished for, it was legacy. Daniel leaned back, heart swelling as engines echoed through the night. He thought of that first birthday, of shame, of failure, of silence, and he thought of this moment, Porch alive with thunder, his sun glowing with strength. Life hadn't given them riches, but it had given them something greater, family that arrived when the world turned its back. As the engines rolled into the distance, Daniel whispered to Ethan, "Remember, son, thunder doesn't leave. It just rides ahead." Ethan nodded, eyes shining. And in that moment, father and son understood. Sometimes salvation doesn't come from riches or miracles. Sometimes it comes from 81 engines shaking a porch, reminding you were never alone. If this story touched your heart, remember, strength isn't measured in wealth, but in love and loyalty. If you believe no one should ever stand alone, like this video. Subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss another story of courage, redemption, and hope.